Hello everyone and welcome to Teach Me Tuesday. Today's episode is sponsored by Unicorn and Pugner, and we're going to hear a little bit about them later on in the show. I am your host Vidab, and with me is an Acinity. See, now usually I would ask you how Dota's been treating you, but seeing as you cover that on the Thursday show, I'm going to ask you a random Dota-themed question instead. So if you had to remove a support hero from the game, not including techies, who would it be and why?
Okay, so I'm removing a support hero from the available pool of heroes. So let's see. What support do I not play? I suppose that's the real question. If I had to remove a support hero from the pool, I mean, keeping in fourth spirit tradition, I'd probably say Crystal Maiden.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't dislike Crystal Maiden. I want to like Crystal Maiden. I just think she's bad. If I was to remove a support from the pool, I'd probably remove... Do they get removed from the game, or is it only support? Like, if I chose Lina, would Lina support not exist, but Lina core exist?
No, she would just be gone.
Just be gone. Okay, all right. I would remove...
Actually, yes. Okay, no, she's gone.
Yeah. I would remove... Man. I would remove...
I didn't really give you much time to think, did I? I was just
Warlock.
like, bam.
You didn't give me any, actually.
It's just straight in there. Warlock. Okay.
Or Venomancer, but Venomancer is like, because Venomancer is not that much of a support. If I really wanted to like answer this in like a shrewd way, I'd be like, all right, let's just remove techies, or let's just remove Meepo. It's like Meepo's not a support, but he can be. No, I would remove for the heroes that are generally supports. I would remove Warlock and or potentially Venomancer.
Okay,
but I don't like Warlock. I think he's boring conceptually, and every time I see him picked, it's a shame. I just don't like him.
I quite like Warlock, actually. I haven't played him for a while, but I thought he was all right.
I hate how Chains works, the Fatal Bonds. Yeah. I just hate that ability conceptually because it lasts so long. Chains, let's see. Fatal Bonds lasts for 25 seconds. That's not how an ability should work in Dota 2. Nothing should last for 25 seconds. It's disgustingly long. If it was like 10 seconds, but it did more, I think that would be fine. But the fact that like I can be in lane and this guy can just spam Fatal Bonds at me and kill a creep wave, like no, screw that. That's dumb. I don't like that at all. It's just not a fun. He's not a fun or dynamic hero in my opinion.
All right.
Like his ult's okay, but he's not a fun dynamic hero. Like one of his abilities is literally you just standing still for like 30 seconds at a time.
That is so
how not
true,
fun
actually.
Is that? And like his heal isn't dynamic and cool. It's a slow heal over time or damage over time. It's just I don't like how the hero works.
That is so true. He does stand still, actually. That's hilarious.
And he's not hard. Like I think I find heroes that are difficult to be really cool, but like Warlock, Fatal Bonds is randomized, so skill cap kind of, but not a lot. Shadow Word is a like it's a point and shoot. You just click it once.
Yeah.
Upheaval is basically I did everything else, so let me just stand still for a while and use Upheaval, and then your ult is just it's humongous. It's like Ravage. It's hard to mess up.
Yeah.
So I just find the hero. I don't find him dynamic and interesting. Well, I like this segment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fair enough. So I think seeing as we started off with a supporting kind of question, I think this episode will probably be mostly about support. I've recently come to the conclusion that I've turned into a bad support, and because I used to think I was a good support and I was like, yes, I'm a great support. I know what to do. And I feel like learning, kind of branching out. I don't really know what I'm doing anymore. And maybe actually, now I'm thinking about it now, maybe because I've been branching out, now I realize I was never a good support to start off with.
Yeah,
right?
Probably. Honestly speaking, that's probably what it was.
Right.
Everybody, yeah.
Because now I know kind of that I'm not fulfilling what I should have been doing, because I'm sometimes playing as the safe lane core and my support will do something great and I'm like, yes. And then most of the time they're just kind of like flapping about and I'm like, it's not what I need. And I think I'm just flapping about. And I think I always have been.
I think a lot of people a lot of people think that they're good at supporting when they're really not, because support goals are very non-linear. Like, we've talked about this many times, but if you're playing a carry and you're like, oh, it's 11 minutes, I have, like, Treads, Wand, Mask of Madness, Akia, and Luna. Like, I'm having a good game. That's a very, you know, it's a goal that is very easily shown. It's like, right, I have this much stuff, whereas support goals are much more ephemeral. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but they're much more, you know, you don't know what they are. It's like, oh, were my words good or not? Were my words good? There's a lot of like little stuff like, oh, were my stacks taken advantage of? Was I able to zone or was I not able to zone? There's like, and it changes, so it fluctuates a lot. It's very difficult to gauge whether you're supporting well or not.
I was actually
from the support perspective.
I was actually wondering whether we were going to go into another grammar and words section, seeing as we're now
No. I tried to turn away from that one real quick, right when I used a word that's a little too big.
But no, I totally agree with what you're saying. And yeah, I kind of feel like I need to have a supporting kind of reset. Kind of, I've got into some bad habits. If I'm I find myself wandering around, not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing quite a lot of the time, even though I feel like I should know. Sometimes I just really don't. And I just, like I said, flap about. So I guess, what would you say? I mean, okay, so your main goal as a support, right, is to, well, I guess
make your cores' lives easy.
Yeah.
That's really like, you do a lot of little things, but
that is
like
the ultimate
your goal is to support. Like, your whole goal in life is to support your cores, and you support them by making their lives easier, right? You want to be ganking your mid lane so that your mid laner has an easier time and has more gold to work with. You want to be protecting your safe laner so that he or she has more gold to work with. You want to be helping your off laner, maybe, because you want them to have XP. Right, you're like an ER nurse or an ER doctor, right? And you're just going from place to place saying like, all right, this person needs my help right now. Then once you're done there, then you go to the next place. And when nobody needs help, then, you know, this metaphor fails you. But that's okay, because usually there's always something to be doing. I guess you go get coffee or whatever. That's like the equivalent of stacking.
Right.
It's like filler time. Like, you're going from place to place, you know, assessing problems, saying, all right, my mid laner is getting ganked, I need to TP and help my mid laner. Or my safe laner is getting 1v1 by the enemy off laner, and the enemy off laner is bullying him or her. Then you say, all right, I need to go there. And then when you don't have to be anywhere, that's when you have the freedom to be like, all right, I'm going to get a pull off, or I'm going to stack a camp, or I'm going to go steal their bounty rune. I'm going to do, you know, X, Y, and Z. So it's about doing those big things, right? Going from lane to lane, getting kills, whatever. And then when you're not doing those big things, instead of just standing around, you want to be positioning yourself so that you can do important things later, like positioning yourself so that if action does happen mid, you can get there, or positioning yourself as to make stacks and do the little things like that. So that's like the broad strokes of supporting, right? Is that this applies to both 4 and 5, although obviously there's a lot of differences between 4 and 5. But your end goal is to make your cores' lives easy. And that is a difficult thing, especially when your cores are random people that you don't know.
Yeah, it's very hard. And I guess one thing I've been finding in my recent games is I get blamed for not being everywhere. So if my mid loses mid, they're like, well, I didn't get a ward mid, so that's why we lost. Or if off lane is losing, because this is like me, I'm supporting safe lane. If our off lane is losing, I get called out for it, going, oh, well, you should have helped us there. And it's like, I don't know whether I should just be ignoring them and just sticking to do what I'm doing, or whether I actually should have been kind of leaving a bit, which as a position of kind of 5 safe lane support, should I?
I mean, there's only so much you can do at the end of the day, right? In general, I think a safe way to win every Dota game is to win 2 of the 3 lanes, just as like a blanket statement. Okay. If you are winning 2 of 3 lanes, you're doing well. And as a support, generally, the way you are going to be conducting yourself is you're going to be focusing on 2 lanes. In most situations, that's going to be mid lane and safe lane. And what I'm trying to get at is basically like if you are safe lane, but you have a TP scroll, that gives you the ability to be in both lanes at once. But you cannot, like, because of TP cooldowns and because of how the map is so large, you can only possibly be in 2 lanes at any given time. And if you're sitting mid, then yeah, you kind of can rotate to the side lanes a little bit, but that's more difficult. So in general, I think in most games, it's safe to say that you're going to lose at least 1 lane, but ideally you want to be winning the other 2. And as a support, you say, all right, like, if they have, let's say their enemy safe lane is like Lifestealer, Shadow Shaman, and a Earthshaker, and your offlaner is an LC. The LC is just going to die there. Like, that's just going to happen. So by them fielding a very strong safe lane, you can just say, all right, we cannot win the offlane unless we invest a ton of resources. Instead, let's just invest that same amount of resources and win mid lane and safe lane. And then you're basically just sacking the offlane. You say, all right, like, you're going to have problems. And sure, that guy or girl might flame you, but who cares? I'll just mute them. I don't know. Like, you get flamed. Supports are just the punching bag. Like, true. They are. People always joke that like the 5 is like the single mother that has like small children that don't like appreciate the amount of work that's going in. Oh. And that's really that's what the 5 is basically. You know, you are the punching bag where it's like, oh, you know, my lane lost, and it's not because of them having a really good play. It's because my teammate has bad play. Because for whatever reason, it's ingrained in us as Dota players to never compliment the enemy. Like, when you lose mid, it's not like, oh, man, the other guy was just better than me. It's like, oh, man, I had a bad matchup, and my support didn't rotate. And that's just how it is. You flame your team instead of being like, wow, that enemy SF was really good at equilibrium management, and I was really bad. No, it's like, man, that SF was so gankable, but my Shadow Shaman was too slow, and he had boots, but not at the right time, and he ganked without a smoke, and he revealed, and then it got me killed. Like, there's just always somebody to blame, and you're so the one to blame. Actually. Yeah, it's a shame, but you know, that's just the life you live.
Yeah, you kind of get in that mentality, don't you? That it's always like it's someone on your team's fault, or I blame myself a lot, like for things that happen in games. I never kind of go, oh well, you know, fair enough, they were really good. I mean, occasionally, but
yeah, occasionally, but it's more rare than not.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So
yeah, I try to notice good plays from the enemy, but a lot of times you're just mad. Because they're making good plays against you, and you're like, "This is BS. This is not fun. It's not okay. I hate this.
It's not allowed." So if so I guess like when would be a good time to? So if I have someone in another lane saying like I'm really struggling, and my lane is doing okay, I don't really want to lose, and then my lane start to lose.
Yes.
So I guess what would your advice be there? Like, should I wait until, because you might not get a kill of whoever's in the off lane or whatever. You might not.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously the obvious answer would be if you get the kill, then maybe go and help somewhere else. But yeah, if you're not, I guess it's like I'm not quite sure how to judge how valuable me leaving would be and whether it's actually worth it or not.
Yeah. Okay. So a good way to think about this is basically calculating risk. So what you want to do is say, all right, let's say it is 6 minutes and I'm playing Shadow Shaman. Or I'm playing Rubik because I don't play Shadow Shaman. I want to use Rubik for my example.
Okay.
That way, when I get into some weird specific situation, I'm not like, oh, I don't know how long Shackle lasts for. Anyway, okay. So let's say it's 6 minutes. You are a Rubik. You're supporting a safe lane Luna. You and whatever your 4 is, pick one, doesn't matter. You guys have sufficiently zoned the enemy offlaner. Let's say it's a Centaur, because that was the game I watched most recently. Okay. You have zoned the Centaur. So it's 6 minutes. The Centaur is like, let's say, level 2.5. And your Luna is like level 5.5, because she's had basically free farm, and you guys have been zoning, which means you guys were not in XP range. So if you leave at this point, your Luna is going to be able to easily position aggressively on the Centaur, and Centaur is still going to get nothing. And of course, earlier in the lane, if you had left earlier, she would not have been able to do that, right? If it's a level 1 Luna versus a level 1 Centaur, that's not a position where the Luna comes out ahead on. But because you guys have sufficiently zoned the Centaur, and he can't jungle because he's playing Centaur, and let's say you stole his bounty runes too because you have a Pudge maybe, this guy's so behind that your Luna can 1v1 this person, and be totally fine, right? And so that's when you're at a point where you can say, all right, the risk of me leaving safe lane is very small, but our offlaner is, I don't know, who's a good example? Our offlaner is like, I was going to say Centaur for this too, but you cannot have two Centaurs in the same game.
No, that's not allowed.
Our offlaner is a Doom.
Okay.
And he's had a really hard time because he went Devour first and he didn't get the pull, whatever excuses you want to give. He just messed up. So he's also level 2 at 6 minutes. If you and whatever your 4 is leave, you can go help that Doom because the risk of leaving Luna alone is virtually non-existent because she is in such a dominant position.
Yeah.
And you can go help that Doom, and even if all you do is get him like a couple levels of XP, that's all he needs to like be put into a much better position. So you have a very achievable goal by going to the off lane, and you have very low risk from leaving the safe lane. So that's a situation where I would say, all right, good. Like that's a good rotation. Whether it's only one support making the rotation or both supports making the rotation, it's about saying, what can I do without losing that much? Because of course, once you do leave a lane, you are going to be losing something on that. Alternatively, to give like the opposite example, let's say the enemy we'll use the same thing. You have a Rubik and a Luna in a lane, in the safe lane. The enemy Centaur had a really good start. Let's say he got like his offlane pull done early, so he was level 2 to start with. My 4 was busy ganking mid, but it didn't work out. So I was unable to zone the Centaur. And again, let's say it's 6 minutes. At 6 minutes, maybe Centaur is level 4, Centaur is level 4 and Luna's level 4.
Yeah.
The risk of me leaving that Luna alone is really big now because the Luna does not have level 3 Lucent Beam, so she's significantly weaker in terms of harass. The Centaur is level 4, which means he probably has level 2 Double Edge, and he has 1 level in Stomp and 1 level in Return. He probably has Boots by now, so he can maybe position more aggressively. He's much harder to kill because my Luna does not have that big advantage level-wise. And again, my Luna still doesn't have level 3 Lucent Beam, which is generally thought of as a breakpoint for Luna's strength in lane. And if my 4 rotates, it doesn't matter because they're low level because they ganked mid and failed, let's say. So now if my offlane is still losing, if I leave my Luna alone, she's going to be just ruined. Like, the risk is great in that situation, whereas the risk is very minimal in the first situation. So with that logic, I don't care how much my offlaner is complaining. My Luna is more important than my Sand King or whoever, or my Doom. That was the example I used. Mm-hmm. The Doom, he'll figure it out. Like, he has Devour. Will be slow for a while, but eventually he'll have Doom and be useful. So, sucks to be him. That's just how it worked out. It's hard. That's just, those are them's the breaks, as they say. So those are two examples, right, where the time is the same, the comp is the same, but you're making a very different decision in each situation. And it's all based on calculating risk versus reward, right? The reward in the first situation way outweighed the risk, whereas the risk in the second situation way outweighed the possible rewards of going to the off lane. That's how I generally think about it.
And I guess, I was just thinking about this. Would you, if you were in that position, would you talk to your teammates and say you wouldn't? You would just do it, whatever. You would just make the decision yourself.
I'm maybe a bad example because I'm not. I don't like to. I shouldn't say I don't like to communicate, but I have minimal communication when I'm in game.
Okay.
Mostly because I don't like people talking to me either.
Okay, fair enough.
And it's a situation where let's see how best to say this without sounding like just a terrible person.
No one talk to me. I don't like talking to people.
It's just distracting. I'm very easily distracted and easily tilted, so I tend to mute people frequently. In games, I communicate necessary information, and only if it's going to have positive results.
Okay.
So if my Doom says, So if my Doom is complaining, let's use the first example.
Yeah.
Or no, let's use the second example because the second example is where we screw over the Doom. So in the second example, the Doom, we can't rotate to help him. The Doom says on mic, hey man, I really need help here. I'm having a really hard time. I'm sure there's gonna be a bunch of curse words. I'm sure it's gonna be much more angry than that. But let's just say he's a nice guy for the sake of
we can imagine.
Be angry.
We can,
yeah. This fairy tale world where our offlane is a nice person, even though they're having a miserable time. So instead of me saying I can't come there, I'm not gonna outline the entire reasoning of why I can't come help the Doom. I'm just going to like chat wheel whoops, and then, you know, that's just how it is.
Okay.
Because like there's very little to gain by me saying like, hey buddy, I can't do that. Like I'm not going to get on my knees and apologize to some random dude on playing Doom offlane. Like it's not productive. There's no gain from me being like, yeah, sorry, I can't come there.
Okay.
If anything, I'll say that one sentence.
Yeah.
And if it comes off like it's so easy, I'd say like the reason why I don't communicate a lot in pubs is because it's so easy for a conversation to turn into an argument and for people to get tilted. Whereas somebody just making offhand comments is easy to ignore. Like in a very literal sense, you could just mute them. Whereas like if this Doom complains and nobody answers him, it's just a Doom complaining. But if I answer him and that tilts him more and he says like, well, you know, Luna would have been fine, you know, yada, yada, yada. Then suddenly you're in an argument with somebody and you're both tilted. Or at the very least, he or she is tilted in the offlane. So I just choose to not communicate at all. Or a very minimal, you know, chat wheel.
And then your other teammates are looking at the two heroes just standing there in lane, not doing anything as you angrily type back and forth to each other, right?
Exactly.
Like I've lost games that way. I'm sure most people have, right? Where you just see two of your team just standing in lane. Like I had, it just like reminded me of this really bad game where they were just at each other's throats the entire game. And eventually I managed to shut them up because I said like one of them died and then the other one blamed the other one. And I was like, no, you're both rubbish. You're both sat in lane, not moving. You died because you're too busy arguing with each other. And yeah, they did. I mean, I actually think we won that game, which is, I mean, it's Dota, right? We should not have won that game, but yeah. Don't get into arguments with your teammates, essentially.
Yeah.
Anything to avoid that, right?
It's very easy to just waste time. I do it myself. Like I'm very prone to tilt, and I avoid that because I mute people. But every once in a while, I'm playing unranked, and I'm like, I'm not going to mute this guy. Like I'm just going to lay into him for like the next half hour. And that's happened a lot more now that I've started changing my name on Steam.
I was going to say, is that why you've changed your name so you can flame people and be mean and not be called out for it?
That makes it sound more malicious than it is, but it's much more like freedom.
Yeah.
Because if my name is like fourth.ursi and I flame some dude and then like a month later, they're like, oh man, let's Google Dota 2 podcast. And they listen to this and they're like, hey, that's that guy that flamed me in that pub.
And then they leave a 1-star review.
Yeah, exactly. And then suddenly, you know, I'm kicked out of my house and everything is ruined.
Yeah.
So I very rarely argue with people, but it is not zero amount of time that I spend arguing with people. So, you know, I try to not like wear my name badge everywhere I go. So yeah, I'm Tropicana Sparkling. So if you got flamed by a guy in the middle of January named Tropicana Sparkling, I apologize. But it's rare. I'm a better person. Anyway,
so
communication is hard.
Yeah, like I think I chat a little bit too much just because I feel like I'm trying to be overly nice to kind of outweigh people being overly like negative, which seems to be the kind of running theme. So I feel like I will just kind of like chat a little bit more and be like, if someone says something mean, I'm like, it's okay, we'll get them next time and stuff like this. Like I'm probably and I'm one of those people.
That's like non-productive.
It's not
like in my mind.
Okay, so I should stop doing that. Another resolution.
I mean, you can do it.
Stop being
I'm just
so
a
nice. Yeah,
I find it very tilting.
Okay.
And again, like these are all my problems laid to bear. But I just like unnecessary or like false positivity tilts me a lot in pubs.
And actually,
it's just like we know we're losing. Like you saying. Like if we lose a team fight and you say, "Oh, we'll get him next time," that's not you've not added anything to the discussion. You've just like said a bunch of words that mean nothing. Whereas like if we lose a team fight and then you say, "All right, well next time we should smoke and then like into their jungle," you know, they're about to get roached, so we need to do X, Y, and Z. That's productive.
Oh my god.
So
okay.
Yeah,
it's actually so true because I never really thought about how it could be read as coming across as like insincere, but actually yeah, okay, I'm gonna stop doing that. Because I might be doing the exact opposite of what I'm trying to do, right? Because I'm trying to like, you know, lift the spirits of the team and, you know, make everyone feel less salty. Except actually I might just be adding to that by being like
It probably does nothing.
Okay.
I'm just like weird like that, I guess. But
well, I'm gonna take your advice over mine, seeing as
I don't play Dota to communicate. I think that's a very clear difference. A lot of people are like, oh, I play Dota because I love team games and I love strategy. And I'm like, no, I play Dota like it's a single player game. And occasionally people talk to me and I don't mute them. That's why like I don't play party games either. I play party games occasionally with like some of my like close friends, but even that is rare. Like most of the time I'm like, no, I'm going to play solo queue. Like that's what I do. Even unranked. I'm just like, no, I want to relax and play solo queue.
Okay.
And like zone out and not talk to anybody. So yeah, take everything I say about communication with like 1,000 grains of salt.
Okay, well, I'll probably try to talk less and we'll see how that goes. But back to supporting, I feel like I'm not quite sure how and where we, how we managed to get onto that path. I'm actually not quite sure where we were. I think we were talking
about communicating as a support. Like if somebody says, "Oh, why didn't you come here?" I would just say nothing. I literally, this happens to me regularly, and I just go to chat wheel and I do whoops, and I just leave it. Like, because that's like a bit of like levity, because like it's just like it's simple and just like funny. Okay. And whatever. It's kind of like when they used to have all the sounds. You remember when they had the sound wheel for TI? Yeah. And people would just like sad trombone and just like add a bit of levity into the situation.
Oh, they should bring those back. But yeah, okay, so I actually need to set up my chat wheel. I think I have all the default stuff. I think I said this like weeks ago because we were talking about how
it's great.
I feel like this must have been the podcast where we were talking about how good Whoops was.
Yeah, I literally have my whole chat wheel set up, but the only things I use in it are I have well played bound separately. I use well played basically after every kill. I use whoops, and I only use whoops if I use it twice. I never say whoops. I always say whoops. Then I use thanks a lot because thanks is great, especially because I'm a mid. I play mid frequently, and if you get tangos and don't say thanks, you're just a scumbag. So I always say thanks after getting tangos, and then I use affirmative. Those are basically the only 4 commands I use. Okay. Is whoops, affirmative, thanks, and get back. But I always forget to use get back.
Okay.
Yeah, chat was great.
I should set
highly
that up.
recommend.
Anyway, enough about communication. Let's go back to
supporting.
Yeah. So actually, this is something I was thinking about. Was I tend to get beaten by greedy supports, I guess. Maybe it's just the skill bracket I'm in, but I actually don't think I've ever had a game where I've been a greedy support. I've never felt like I've been particularly farmed. I feel like I've always had like the least amount of money. I feel like I have like no money to spend or anything. And actually, and this kind of like leads on to Midas on support heroes. Is that a good thing? Like, do you do that?
No, I should say I have done that many, many, many times.
But you wouldn't recommend
it. I would not advocate for it, except for on like very select supports. And even then, I wouldn't do it. Like AA is the only support that I buy Midas on regularly. There's some 4s that you can get away with it, but it's one of those things where Midas is just less efficient for supports because they have so many utility items that you could buy, and you'll net more gold for your team by building a support item like a Glimmer Cape or an aggressive support item like a Solar Crest, rather than the individual net worth you will gain from a Midas. So a good example. If I'm playing core, I can build a investment item like a Midas or a Battle Fury because I am thinking about myself first and foremost, right? If I'm playing a safe lane CK, sure, I could build an armlet first and faster, or I could go Midas and then armlet. And sure, it'll delay my armlet by, let's say, 2 or 3 minutes. But I have this investment item in the Midas. Whereas a support, you get less money, so you're getting that Midas much slower, or I should say the Midas money much slower. But if you buy a Solar Crest, you can then go around the map and gank a bunch of lanes and make like 500 gold for your team in the space of 1 full Midas cooldown, because you have an action item that is allowing your cores to succeed. Or vice versa, instead of buying a Midas, I can buy a Glimmer Cape, and then instead of my core dying, I can save them with that Glimmer. And then instead of me getting 190 gold, my core has saved 250 gold because they didn't die. Stuff like that is why you generally don't want to go Midas on supports. The only exception, I should say, I don't even know if this is necessarily an exception. It's more like an excuse for myself, because I like Midas as an item. It's very fun, and I am a greedy support player in general. The only time I do it is if I've had like an amazing first 5 minutes, and if I have like 1,500 gold at like 5 minutes, and I'm playing a support, that's where it kind of enters my mind, like, man, maybe I could get away with a Midas. Because it's just so much money so early that you're getting in that situation, you're getting a Midas at potentially the same timing that a safe lane core would be getting a Midas. So that's where it kind of equals out.
Okay.
So in general, greedy supporting is not about building Midas. I think that's a common misconception.
Yeah. I mean, that was going to be my next question. I was going to say, can you be a greedy support without a Midas?
Absolutely. It's about, okay, so let's see. I play a greedy support. Okay. Almost all my games. That's like, I don't do it so much anymore, but my like climb to 5K initially was mostly Rubik and Winter Wyvern, and I'm a super greedy Winter Wyvern and a super greedy Jakiro. I'm not that greedy on Rubik, but that's, I'm actually still kind of greedy. I'd say the way that I am I have to try to structure this so that it's not like gibberish. Let's see. All right. So to be a greedy support, it's not about buying a Midas or about stealing CS from your carry in lane or about staying in lane and soaking XP. Being a greedy support in a productive manner is about finding farm when you're not doing other things instead of producing farm for your carries, or your cores, I should say. So an example of this would be in our earlier, let's just keep with this running example of Luna, Rubik, Doom. So in the earlier game, if our Doom does not need help in the off lane and our Luna is set up and does not need help in the safe lane anymore because we've zoned officially, etc., I can be greedy, and instead of making a stack of a hard camp for my Luna to take, I can make a pull. And then I will get an entire small camp's worth of farm and an entire large camp's worth of farm through that pull. And Luna, she'll still be fine because she's been set off to a good start and have that advantage so she can last hit on her tower because she has enough items to be, securely have enough damage, etc., etc. Or if I'm playing like a support Night Stalker or a support Pudge, I can just like kill a medium camp on my way back to base instead of walking back to base and then being in lane faster. That is the greedy. It's about small instances of greed. And saying, right, instead of stacking and producing farm for my Luna, I'm going to pull and get farm for myself. Another more mid-game oriented example of this that I find myself doing most frequently, and the thing that's changed my gameplay to be more greedy and more successful is instead of, if there's an open lane and I don't need to be somewhere else, I will go to that lane. Whereas a less greedy support might say, well, my core might TP there and get that farm, or, I should go ward. But if you have all of the other necessary tasks covered, you can just go walk to that lane. You don't want to TP to the lane in general unless the tower's getting pushed, just because you don't want your TP scroll to be on cooldown. But if you're playing Rubik or Jakiro in whatever game you want to use, and nobody's farming bottom, and the enemy team is dead, but you can't push, like let's say you guys used all your ultimates, and there's just no possible way you can push. Everybody just goes back to base, and there's just farm bottom. If nobody else is going to get it, go take it. Go for it. That's something that is, it's like incremental greed, right? It's not investing 1,650 gold into buying a Midas recipe at 12 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a much more committal single instance of greed. It's this incremental greed where you're like, all right, like I'm going to get a creep wave here and a creep wave there, and then gradually I'm going to build up my net worth, and I'm going to build up, the ability to have these items. And that's a much more measured amount of greed that is manageable in a regular game. And I think this is especially suitable for pubs because you just inherently you don't trust your teammates as much. Like I play a much different support when I know my carry is good versus when I don't know my carry at all. Like if I'm in a pub and I see my carry is like super high MMR, then I will invest more time into providing them with a good game. But if my carry, like let's say so I'm like Divine 1 at the moment, and my game's average to be Divine 1. And if there's an Ancient 5 guy and he picks a Luna safe lane, I'm not going to be as inclined to make stacks for that person who is statistically just worse than my entire team. Maybe they're going to outperform, whatever. That's great and all. But in that game, I'm going to, stack and pull instead of making stacks for my Luna. But if my safe lane carry is my Divine 5, rank 500 player, and they're, punching below their weight class, then, I'm going to make them have the best game they possibly can because I trust that they are going to carry me because they are better.
Okay.
Or like when I play with Proud, like I play... Actually, that's a lie. I play greedy with Proud just because I like to mess with Proud. But yeah, that's generally how I balance it. It's about incremental greed, and it's about just getting eking out every little bit of farm that you can, and instead of making a rotation, get that last hit. Or let's say I'm in a lane and my carry decides to go get a bounty rune. They're going to miss one last hit in that creep wave. Unless they're moving at 1,000 movement speed, they're going to miss the last hit in the oncoming creep wave. So I'm going to get that last hit, and suddenly I've made 50 gold. Whereas a much more selfless support would be 50 gold poorer right now for no reason. You lose nothing by getting that farm. You only have things to gain.
That's very true.
It's about identifying when you can get farm and then farming, rather than making these grandiose plays.
Okay.
That is mostly from a 5 position perspective. 4 is similar, but I would say a greedy 4 is also balanced with a lot of aggression. And honestly, I play a much more greedy 5 than a greedy 4, which sounds weird because obviously 4 is a higher farm priority.
Yeah.
But 4, let's see. Playing a greedy 4 is more about farming. It's similar in that you're trying to eke out farm, but a lot of it is you tell your 3 to go jungle, or you just go jungle yourself if you're able to do that. If you're playing a 4 Earthshaker, you're level 5, you're level 3 Aftershock, you just farm jungle camps and get a few hundred gold to finish that Blink Dagger instead of ganking. Whereas a 5, you're always going to be in lane. But yeah, a 4, you just kind of don't gank for a couple of minutes, and then if you can get away with it. Again, that's the key, is balancing, can I get away with being greedy versus just being greedy? Because if you're just greedy when you shouldn't be, then you're going to lose games. But if you're greedy when you can afford to be greedy, that's how you win and maximize and optimize your farm and whatnot.
Okay. Do you ever follow people around whilst they're farming jungle camps to soak XP?
No, not jungle camps.
Okay.
I will supporting a lot of the time situationally, the best thing you can do in certain games is just to be behind somebody.
Yeah.
Let me see if this is the right game. I played a game where this was literally at a certain point I was I need to just stand on top of my carry, and that's it. What game was it? I'm just scrolling through my Rubik games. I've basically only been playing Rubik recently, which is why I'm talking about him so much.
It's a good hero.
Let's see. Oh yeah, in this game. So I was playing a Rubik game, and we had an OD on my team. And this is actually a wild game. We narrowly won. It was awesome. But at a certain point, I was I am worthless alone. I'm just gonna get picked off and instantly die. They had a Slark, and they had a Slardar that was pretty fed, a 4 Slardar. So if I was alone, I was just gonna instantly die, and then that's gonna serve no purpose. But at a certain point, maybe around the 35-minute mark, I would just sit behind my OD, and at one point I was literally just followed, how you right click somebody and you follow them. At one point I was literally just standing on top of him, and that was it. And that resulted in multiple kills and multiple pickoffs and stuff, because I was just always with my important person, right? It's when a celebrity with their bodyguard, right?
Yeah.
It's I was the frail, small celebrity, and I was just standing on top of my 8'9" bodyguard, and then we were good. Whereas if I was alone, I would just get mobbed constantly. Mm-hmm. And that also means they can't pick off my bodyguard, my OD, because he's just so buff, and then he has me to distract, and they try to jump him, I can retaliate. Whereas, so that eliminates their pick up potential on him, and makes me do useful things. But that's not for XP purposes. That's just for winning the game purposes and strategic purposes.
Okay. So if you're not following your important person around, you're either getting a ward down, or you're kind of safely in a lane somewhere and being a bit more greedy.
Yeah. So
but you're not like because I always thought being in a lane by yourself as a support is kind of dangerous. I guess if it's more towards like your towers, then you're okay. I guess like the issue I have is sometimes I kind of push a little bit too far forwards.
A common issue.
Yeah. So I guess so it's safe to do if you have like vision and stuff, but just kind of don't push it too far. So it's okay to be in lanes by yourself.
Yeah, and if your other lanes don't need help. It's okay to be a Jakiro in your safe lane alone if like your Luna is farming the jungle, right? Because then again, like we said earlier, if nobody's taking the farm, you may as well get it.
Yes.
Because it's just going to feed into the tower otherwise. But if your, off lane is getting ganked, don't stay in top lane. TP and help the bottom lane. So you don't want to focus too hard on getting farm unless you're really close to an item. That's kind of the one caveat that is a bit like questionable, honestly. But if you're like an Earthshaker and you have 2100 gold and your offlaner is getting ganked, maybe you forget that you have a TP scroll and then you get an extra creep wave and then suddenly you have a blink dagger. That's kind of, you got to make your risk assessment for that one. But yeah, if you can afford to just be in a lane safely and not die while your safe lane carry, goes and farms creeps in the jungle or, whatever, if your team is just free to do something, sure, go get some farm. Yeah, that's basically how you're playing greedy support, is just eking out like 100 gold here and 100 gold there, rather than like you don't take 6 minutes off to farm on a support, but you do that on cores sometimes. And that's just kind of the difference in mentality. Is it's about getting a little bit, a lot of times rather than a lot, a few times. Mm-hmm. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
That probably doesn't. Yeah, so that's the gist of it. Highly recommend in pubs, honestly, especially like the lower MMR you go, the longer games are. Just like in general, you can assume like people just pick more cores and they don't know how to end games as well and they don't group as fast. Whereas like if you go to super high MMR games, people are ending games like 30 minutes because it's like, all right, like I pick Lycan, you're going to pick Beastmaster, our mid lane is going to pick SF, and then we're going to run them down at 18 minutes and get a Rax. Like, bam, done. Whereas at a lower MMR, you might have an SF, a Beastmaster, and a Lycan on a team, but that game is going to drag out because the Lycan farms a little less efficiently, so his necro timing is slower, and then they don't group up because, they're just less coordinated, they don't realize that their team comp is as good as it is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's where you can get away with a bit more greed as a support. Or just in general as like a individual that plays Dota.
Man, people do not, they just love to not group up in my games.
Yeah, my games too.
I guess it's something that everyone has to deal with, but it is the most frustrating thing is I'm there going, please, 3 of them are dead. We're all alive. Let's just not go and farm. Let's push it out. Let's take objectives. This will be great. We could win this.
It's dangerous always. I mean, that's just pub strategy. Like you think... Like frequently I find, I feel like I'm at a weird point MMR wise, like, cause I'm at like, I think I'm at like 5,200 right now. And people are coordinated and good enough to group up, but also some people are too gung ho about grouping up and then we just throw.
Yeah.
Like, I just lost an Invoker game yesterday, and admittedly I played bad. I was trying on a new build, but I'll talk about that on Thursday. Or maybe I won't because it was just embarrassing. But we had a Huskar on our team, and we were Huskar draft, so it's like we're supposed to group up early. But this guy was just way too gung-ho, and then we just ended up feeding like 5,000 gold in the course of 2 fights to a Dragon Knight, and suddenly we were just losing because he had like 6 slots at 34 minutes.
Ugh.
And it's just like again, like a lot of people complain about not grouping up, but that was a game where we should have grouped up, but this guy was a little too enthusiastic about grouping up, and then we just fed, and then we just lost. So it's about, knowing when to group and when not to group. But in general, to get back to the point, you can be more greedy the slower game paces are, and in general, obviously there are always exceptions. In general, it is games are slower paced at lower MMR and faster paced at higher.
Yeah.
And even that's like that'd probably be an episode in and of itself, because there's a weird conception of low MMR games are very high kill. I think that's I hate using like the term like, oh, lower MMR games or high MMR games, but it is accurate. So
why
lower MMR games are higher kill in general, because people are more distracted and they play the game more like team deathmatch. There is a false conception or false perception. I think it's both. Hashtag grammar podcast. There is a false interpretation of that game state of having like 45 kills to 55 kills. That is not necessarily a fast-paced game. That is just a game where people are killing each other. But because people are killing each other, people think it's a fast-paced game. They're like, oh man, we're doing so many things. When in reality, they're not. Like, it's 40 minutes and you haven't taken all their enemy tier 2s. Like, that's not a fast-paced game. It's just a game where people are just running bodies at each other. So, yeah, games are slower paced in terms of objectives. And that's what's important at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I'd never really thought about that low MMR games last longer, which actually, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know if the stats back me
up on that. I think it probably evens out. And over, like, if you look at 10,000 lower MMR games, it probably evens out to being maybe like a 2-minute difference or something. But I think looking at aggregate data in Dota is always kind of skewed, because a certain amount of those games are super fast because somebody fed, and then and some of those games are worthless data because, you know, there was a Smurf on one team. So it's hard to look at aggregate data and draw conclusions. But from watching lower MMR games and watching higher MMR games and playing in both, lower MMR games, people are more distracted and they play games at a slower pace. Games may be more hectic. I think that's a good word to use. Like, a high kill game is very hectic and exciting, but is not necessarily fast paced. Whereas a game where you could win a game with no kills, and if you just run down Raxes at 17 minutes, that's not a high kill game. It's not a hectic game. It's a methodical game, but it's a very fast paced game. So yeah, it's hard to prescribe labels and make objective statements about lower MMR versus higher MMR, but that is an observation of mine that is not entirely anecdotal.
Okay. Yeah, I think it kind of makes sense.
I hope it makes sense. Yeah. Otherwise, this is just going to sound like nonsense. No pun intended.
All right, let's do some ads.
Let's. Oh, man, I'm glad you remembered, because I forgot.
See, I'm getting better at this.
I'm proud. I'm getting worse. So somebody's got to toe the line.
So our first sponsor is Pugna. They're an online platform and community where high-skilled Dota players and coaches create educational video guides on how to improve at the game, learn new heroes, and help you climb the ranks. The platform is ad-free, and each hero guide is divided into separate videos tackling specific concepts or hero mechanics. Each guide also has accompanying Dota client Steam guide to help you apply to what you learned from your Pugna coaches. There's plenty of content for players of all skill levels to learn from, so whether you're just learning the game or have already played for a long time, or just a veteran looking to brush up, there's plenty for you to learn from. You can try out the full Pugna Pro subscription for 30 days, 100% free. Just email support@pugna.com, which is PVGNA, and you can find Pugna on Twitter @Pugna or @Pugna.com.
Yeah. I like Pugna. We had Donnie on the show on Thursday, if anybody missed that. It was
a good
fun.
show.
Donnie's a nice guy. He's very tall in real life.
Especially...
I'm pretty sure everybody looks kind of tall to me, but I met him at TI. And I was like, this person does not look like a Dota player.
What does a Dota player look like?
Me, basically. He's like an athletic, like, tall guy, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is what we've come to. Like, we're like real... Like, we're defying every joke's about like defying gamer stereotypes and all like the kind of harmful gamer stereotypes. And I was like, Donnie, you're doing the Lord's work right now. Like, it's like Fly. Like, Fly should be on every poster of every like Dota advertisement, because people are like, oh man, these nerds playing games on a computer. And it's like, no, this guy is like tall and muscular.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, like that's why we need Fly to represent Dota, and we need Donnie to represent Pugna. And I don't really fit in there, but that's okay. I'll take one for the team.
I was going to say, I especially enjoyed Proud's impression of Donnie at the end of the Thursday episode.
Yeah, it's very inaccurate, slanderous.
that was real funny. But yeah, Pugna's great. I've been making my way through, I think I mentioned this last week, I've been making my way through the Ultimate Warding Guide, which is just, it's real good. I've actually had to kind of like watch it through a second time just because it's full of so much good info. It just kind of seeps out of your brain after a while. You're watching it and you're like, that's so good. And then you forget. So, but yes, definitely check them out. And our second sponsor is Unicorn. Unicorn is everyone's premier esports outlet. They have completely legal and free-to-play esports betting everywhere, as well as real money betting if you live in the UK or Australia. You can earn betting tokens as well as Unicorn Gold to use on cosmetic item raffles just by playing your favorite games. In addition to esports betting, Unicorn has plenty of other stellar Dota 2 content, including articles, pro meta analysis, guide to new patches when they go live, and common esport interest pieces from Gorgon and many others. Unicorn also has their new Unicorn Connect, which is CONNEKT, service where you can earn Unicorn Gold just by playing Dota 2, CSGO, or LoL, and trade in gold for chances to win cosmetic items from those games at no extra cost to you. You can find Unicorn at unicorn.com and more info on Connect at unicorn.com/connect. And that's Unicorn, which is UNIKRN, and Connect, CONNEKT.
Yep, we got ESL 1 is going on right now, right? I think. So if you want to make some wagers on there, is it ESL 1 qualifiers or just ESL 1? I don't know. I watch pro games, but I'm not good at following tournaments, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of tournaments. I was watching,
I can lose track because
which is the most recent one?
Captain's Draft was the recent big one, and then we had was it like the one in the Philippines?
Yeah, I was
Galaxy Battle.
That was on over the weekend. I think I managed to catch the final. I don't know whether did you watch any of it?
No, I'll be honest.
Okay.
I was gonna lie and be like, oh, I looked at games. No, I didn't. I did not watch any single piece of it. I'll be honest.
Well, then moving swiftly on.
I watched Peaky Blinders all weekend, and I cannot bet on the outcome of Peaky Blinders.
I need to watch that.
It's good.
It sounds really good. Not that that's relevant to Dota, but
it's pretty relevant. I mean, the Thursday show we may end up being a Peaky Blinders fan cast. Who knows? Depends on the interest, or depending on the intro.
All right, so let's do some listener questions. Our first one is from Dan Burris. He says, is ranked really that much better or more fun than unranked? I'm having a hard time seeing the value of calibrating and playing ranked unless there's a huge value in finding a group of people to play with.
So, I play a lot of both. A lot in terms of my Dota 2 pool. Like, yeah. If I play 3 games in a day, right now it's usually like 1 unranked and 2 ranked games. Unless I'm playing party, which is rare. In general, I would say in the last few months, my unranked game quality has gone way down, and my ranked quality has gone way up. And so now that's why sometimes I don't even play unranked. Like normally I play a warm up game in unranked, but unranked is just filled with Smurfs. That's my big problem with unranked. And they are a constant frustration. And then also there's just less weight to the games in the sense that it doesn't actually affect your rating. So people tend to like be practicing weird things and doing like weird off the wall strats or just not caring that much, or people like they play drunk or stuff like that, like little things like that.
Yeah.
And whereas that's less common, I feel like in ranked, because, people have the control to be like, all right, I'm tipsy and I'm still drinking. I shouldn't be playing ranked right now. Whereas they're like, oh man, this is the perfect time to play Dota. I mean, to play unranked. So yeah, I tend to have better games in ranked, I will say. The game quality, obviously, you have good games and bad games in both. That's just how it works out sometimes. I get just as many intentional... Well, actually, that's probably a lie. I get almost as many intentional feeders in ranked as I do in unranked.
Okay.
But I will say ranked forces me to take the game more seriously, first of all, because there are fake internet points on the line, so that's value. Whereas unranked, if I lose an unranked game, like, sure, I'm unhappy. I would like to have won it, but, it's not the end of the world. I take ranked much more seriously. And I think there are a lot of people that don't necessarily do that. Like, there are a lot of people that play ranked just like they play unranked, and, if they lose, they don't care. But there's enough people that are like me, I would say, that it makes ranked into a better atmosphere.
Yeah.
The only dangerous thing I would say is that I feel like people are a bit more toxic because people are a bit more try-hard when it comes to ranked.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, speaking for myself, as much as I'm not a toxic player, I almost never start a flame war, but on the very rare occasion that I do just get mad at somebody, it is in ranked. If it's unranked, it's just how it is. But if I'm in ranked, it takes the game a lot more seriously, and I'm not even a toxic player. So the actual toxic players are going to be way worse in ranked. But then again, you just mute them and you move on. But I find more people get toxic and throwy in unranked, whereas in ranked they get toxic and then they just flame, which you just mute them and move on. So I would say conclusively that ranked is a better experience than unranked. The only exception to that, at least for me, the only exception to that is that unranked is a good place to learn if you're playing with mixed MMR friends and stuff like that. I stand by what I would say one of the best ways to learn and get better at Dota is to play with a variety of players, both better and worse than you, because it leads to a deeper understanding of the game and more variation in roles and stuff, depending on your stack. Some stacks, I guess, they some guy just only plays mid, maybe. But whereas ranked, you're always playing with people around your skill level. And that can be very limiting, I think, because you're just not exposed to as many new and interesting things if you're always playing with people of the same skill level. So that's something to be cautious of. And that's something that I have to consciously remind people of. If they only play ranked and they only play ranked at Guardian 2, they're not seeing better players. They're literally just seeing the same Guardian 2 players over and over. Sure, maybe they run to a Smurf once in a while, but there's no exposure to higher level play. And I think that's a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
So
actually, maybe I was just wondering, I mean, it's probably not, it's probably unrelated, but I've been losing a ton more and I feel like I've been playing way worse recently. And I've the usual stack that I play with actually don't play Dota as much anymore. So I'm playing a lot by myself. And I guess I was just thinking, usually, when the stack I usually play with, if we lose and stuff, we kind of talk about why we lost and what went wrong and stuff like that. Whereas it's just me kind of going into a game, most likely losing. Because actually, I think I was looking at Open Dota because it gives you your win rate over the last 20 matches. My win rate is at 25%. So it's
yikes.
I'm having a tough time. So
after every losing streak comes a winning streak.
Yeah, hopefully this is maybe next week it'll be a completely different story. But I think I've been kind of going into games and then losing and then kind of leaving and kind of going, ugh, well, that was rubbish. And then just going into another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I should play more stacks, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to be in a, well, I mean, you kind of do need to be in a stack. I think the exchange of viewpoints and opinions, even if you're all at the same MMR, people just have different experiences, and it's very valuable to be right, if I lose a game and I'm thinking just myself, hey, why did I lose that game? I may come to a completely different conclusion than my friend who also lost that same game. So that's why it's valuable, whether you're playing alone or playing with friends, to think about games after they happen. Whether it's ranked or unranked. But yeah, I find unranked, I just don't care as much, and games are a lot more cut and dry. It's just because people don't care as much.
Yeah, I actually think I play a better unranked than I do ranked because I don't care as much.
There's no stress involved.
Yeah, so I don't find because I used to get really, really nervous playing ranked, but I don't
Yeah, same.
I don't get that nervous anymore, but I think I kind of think a little bit too much, which isn't particularly helpful. So, but then I just kind of go into a bit of a frenzy where I'm thinking all these things and I'm not really sure where to go. So I wouldn't say I'm feeling, yeah, I guess it's kind of more stress than it is feeling anxious, or I'm not really sure. But, yeah, I also have kind of just stopped playing unranked recently. I've been playing way more ranked just because I realized what's the point of playing unranked. I'm seeing the value way more since playing ranked and since calibrating. I'm kind of not really sure whether there's much point in playing unranked. But the quality of my unranked games seem to be worse. Like the people I have in my ranked games seem to be worse. They do more strange stuff, which I would have assumed people would save for playing unranked, but people are just whacking out like weird heroes dangerous. And weird lanes, and I'm like, why?
Yeah. Also, like, I mean, it's always dangerous because like ranked also has the dynamic of people that are spammers, and some spammers spam weird things. Like if we had a questioner from last week who's like, yeah, I've gained like 1200 MMR or whatever just playing Wraith King jungle every game.
Oh yeah.
And that is something that's obviously working for that dude, but if you run into those people in ranked with that mentality more so in unranked, because if you have an 80% win rate on Underlord support, you're not going to play that in unranked. Why the heck would you ever play that in unranked? Like, go win your MMR. So you run into that in ranked, which I think feeds into a bit of those weird picks where people are like, oh, I just play Enchantress every game. I just play, Chen jungle every game. Stuff like that, with probably bad examples. But you don't run into that in unranked as much, right? Because like if you've played 500 games of Chen, why would you play that in unranked? Like go play it in ranked, get your reward for investing 500 hours into Chen. So yeah, it's a minefield either way.
Okay. All right, so let's do a question from New Guy.
All right.
He says, as a support, how do you play a slow game? In brackets, no ganking, calls are just farming.
Yeah. All right. So this kind of ties into actually playing greedy support, because in my mind, when you're playing a really slow game, you have two options, right? You can either speed up the game or work towards the slow pace. So the one option is to speed up the game, and that's where you're forcing issues. That can be hard, depending on what hero you're playing. Like, a good example of a hero that can force an issue would be like Spirit Breaker. If you're playing a slow game and you're playing Spirit Breaker, you could just like, hey, I'm going to charge that guy. Let's go kill him. And then if it doesn't work out, then you just back off, and you cancel your charge. Or it might force your teammates to stop that slow pace and like, go for kills and go for objectives and stuff like that. So if you're on issue forcing type of heroes, you can do that. The alternative is just to work towards that slow pace and say, all right, I'm playing Dazzle. If I'm playing Dazzle, I cannot force any issues. If I try to force issues, I'm just going to feed. What I can do, though, is farm. And I can say, all right, my like AM is farming the jungle, so I'm going to get a couple creep waves here and there. And that way, you're getting something out of that slow pace game because you're getting farm. Whereas in a fast paced game, you're not going to have the time to farm. Like, if you guys are constantly pushing and you're playing Dazzle, you're going to be healing, you're going to be not killing creeps because your team is going to be wave clearing super fast, yada, 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 you do not have gold. But in a slow-paced game, you can say, all right, like, nobody's in this lane, I guess I'm going to farm it because the enemy team are just farming and I'm just farming, and I can't do anything to change that, so you just got to, get as much as you can out of it. It's an annoying position to be in. To be honest, like cores tend to like slow paced games, even if they're bad at it. Like if I'm playing Lifestealer, I don't want to play a slow paced game. But on the other hand, I'm playing a core and I'm farming, and I really like gold sounds, so I'm probably gonna just farm it out. In some situations.
Yeah. That's
so
true.
Yeah, it can be a bit intoxicating to be like, oh man, I could just farm for the next 10 minutes. Awesome. But in reality, you should be like, hey, I'm playing Lifestealer. I peaked 5 minutes ago. I need to go win this game. Otherwise, we're going to lose. Like, that's just how it is. So yeah, you can be a little dangerous playing slow-paced games. But as a support, sometimes you don't have an option. Like, sometimes you just have to play a slow-paced game. And that's just how it is. So yeah, be cautious. It also depends if your team is making it slow-paced or if their team is making it slow-paced. I think that's an important distinction that I don't think it really impacts your gameplay, but it is important to realize why the game is slow-paced, if that makes sense. Like, I played a slow-paced game the other day because the enemy team had a techies. And that's, not my fault. Like, that's just the enemy team has techies, so it's hard to push into them. So we just farmed it out. Eventually, we won a big fight. We had a gem, and then we went and won. And it was fine. But it took 65 minutes or whatever. And then the alternative is, if I have a techies on my team, then the way we win that game is different, right? We don't buy the gem. We buy, a bunch of pushing items, or we buy a bunch of big items and just win because we have a Rubik with a scythe at 50 minutes, and nobody expects a Rubik to have a scythe of ice at 50 minutes. Like, Rubiks don't generally have that. So there's some differences in how you approach a game that is slow paced, but it's very dangerous to try to force issues if you're not capable of forcing them. I think that's kind of the moral of the story is somehow you just got to accept your lot in life. If you're playing Dazzle, you're not going to force an issue, so don't try. You just got to, farm it out, play slow, and then maybe, guide your team to push or something like that, right? Obviously, communication is a larger part of speeding up a game pace, but, don't stress too much. Just farm a bit.
Okay. So next we have a question from LT Condor. It's in a couple of different parts, so
let's part this out. So it's all about aggro trilanes, basically. This was actually on a Thursday. Team Lit played. It's Condor and Migs and Essay, and then two other people that I'm forgetting at the moment, and I apologize for. But I was recording during the games, so that's why I was not very attentive. Anyway, that's my excuse for not memorizing the entire roster of Lit. So he asked how to deal with a trilane. And the first part was playing as a trilane, and then the other part was playing against an aggro trilane. And then the facet of this question is when do you just stop the trilane? And I want to answer that question first. So if you are trilaning, I believe, let's see, I can't remember their draft. Let's say you're trilaning with you're trilaning with Venge and Bristleback and a Pudge. That's your trilane. It's not a great trilane, but it's not a terrible trilane either. You're aggroing and the enemy team is weak and they lose to it and you're able to pressure them super hard. That's when your trilane wins, and that's when you take your tower early and you move along and you put a lot of pressure out. And then you rotate your supports and maybe even the core in the tri-lane to other lanes. You take objectives, you take all the tier 1s, you're taking map control gradually. That's kind of how a tri-lane goes ideally, is you pressure the enemy carry doesn't get farm, your offlaner gets a lot of farm, and a lot of XP, of course, also. And then you get an early tower and it opens up the map for the rest of your team, and then you have a lot more freedom. The alternative to that is if you do that tri-lane, but let's say you overextend and then you die twice, the enemy team now has a level advantage on you and suddenly you cannot take their tower. That's when you have to ditch the lane and say, all right, my supports need to go help my safe laner, my supports need to go gank mid, they need to stack, they need to do whatever, and then you just leave the Bristleback in the off lane to just be a regular off laner at that point. It's one of those things where when you lose with an aggro tri-lane, it's very committal, and the situation that you put yourself in is one that is very, make it or break it, situation wise. You're saying, all right, I'm investing 3 heroes in a place. I need to get an objective or a goal completed, and if I do not complete that goal, then I just wasted 2 heroes worth of time. Because my Bristleback could have accomplished nothing, just like a Bristleback, a Venge, and a Pudge can accomplish nothing. Yeah. So that's where you kind of have to draw the line. Is you should have a clear-cut goal in what your aggro tri-lane is going to do. Generally, that is to pressure the enemy safe laner and get the tower. And then if you cannot accomplish that goal, realize that early and then pivot. But if you can accomplish that goal, execute it. As planned.
Do you think there would be a time limit on that? So would you say by like a specific time in the game? If you haven't achieved that goal, then move on.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the goal, but in general, I would say like the first 8 minutes. If your tri-lane has not worked, that's actually probably too long. If your tri-lane is like has middling success, I'd probably leave at like 5 or 6 minutes. Or I would rotate another hero from another lane to like really just finalize that tower. Or if, yeah, I would say like you should realize that things are not going well or that things are going well by the 5 or 6 minute mark. Really, realistically, you should realize that earlier. Like, a lot of aggro lanes, you try to aggressively take that rune. If you try to take that rune and die, you're probably like, that's a good sign that you guys maybe should just not aggro and should just leave it to having a regular offlaner. Yeah, because so fundamentally the problem with aggro lanes is that you have less XP because you have nothing to pull from. Also, pulling is kind of antithetical to what you want to do as an aggro lane.
Yeah.
But the enemy team, they're just getting more and more creeps fed in. So they build a level advantage on you. So you want to be winning the lane super hard for the first few levels where things are more equal. Whereas if you're a tri-lane and you have 3 level 3 heroes and the enemy team has 2 level 5 heroes and a level 3 hero, you guys are boned. Like, you're just going to have a hard time. So yeah, you need to realize that quickly and then, dip if it's not going well. The other difference, or the other big thing with aggro lanes is you should pre-plan them. Like a safe lane, tri-lane, there's a ton of combinations you can do with a safe lane, tri-lane, right? It's a very basic element of any team comp that's pretty easy to build. But aggro lanes are much more specific. You generally don't want to just be like, oh, I guess we're going to aggro. Like I know in one of the lit games, they played Axe in an aggro tri-lane. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Axe works as an aggro tri-lane. I think he works well as an aggro dual lane, if anything. But they just had a selection of heroes that just didn't do things. And the enemy team had really good wave clear, and they just like outfought them. And then they wasted away this entire aggro tri-lane concept. If you want to aggro tri-lane, you want to say, all right, we are going to be playing Bristleback, Venge, and Io, or something. Whatever the 3 heroes are, and have very specific goals in mind. So, all right, like, we're going to do these 3 heroes. Our goal is to take the tower early. We're going to accomplish that goal by doing X, Y, and Z, either by killing the enemy or by just pushing the tower in, like with the Jakiro, let's say, and then executing that. And if it doesn't go well, just leave. Just bounce.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So why would you say, because you said Axe is good for a duo aggro lane, mm-hmm. but not as a as
a tri-lane?
A tri-lane, yeah. So why is that?
So Axe is very strong on his own, and he wants to play from head. Axe is one of the worst heroes to play from behind. That's probably an exaggeration, but he's not fun to play from behind. But he also wants XP a lot. So when you're duo laning, when you're duo laning, you can support that Axe and make him have a really strong lane, but without committing a third hero, and then that allows your third hero to be mid or to be safe lane. Whereas like if you're running a weaker hero that's not maybe you're running something that's not traditionally an offlaner, like if you're playing a like Venge, Veno, and Venge, Veno, and like Sven, and in an aggro tri-lane, none of those heroes can offlane confidently. Like maybe Veno can kind of. So that is why you're playing 3 heroes there. So it's a bit. It's you need to have the right heroes for it. Basically, you can't just suddenly be a tri-lane. That's much more dangerous. You want to pre-plan a tri-lane, whereas you can just kind of figure out a safe lane tri-lane.
Okay, so how would you say best to play against one then?
So now that we've kind of gone through the goals of a tri-lane, you're basically trying to subvert those goals if you're playing against the tri-lane, right? So the enemy team is tri-laning you. You want to identify what their goal is and then make sure that doesn't happen. So if they want to push your tower, you want to kill the creep waves really fast. If they want to kill you, you want to be under your tower safely and make it so that if they try to kill you, they have to dive, and then you can kill them in return. You also want to be forcing them to always have those 3 heroes there if they've already committed that, right? This is more applicable to those situations where somebody picks a very specific aggro trilane. So if they picked, like my example of Venno, Venge, and Sven, you want to put them in a situation where if they stop trilaning, they just don't have an offlaner because none of those heroes can be offlaners. So yeah, it's a lot about just identifying, hey, what are they going to do and how do we stop that? And the way that you lose against an aggro trilane is if you allow them to do what they want to do, basically. If they have a push comp and you're not able to stop that push, you either need to realize that there's just no way you can deal with it and then like go aggro yourself or go like aggro aggressively play mid. Yeah, I think so a good way to kind of wrap this concept up is to say it's just about knowing when you've lost. Like whether you're playing as an aggro trilane or playing against an aggro trilane, you need to realize the point at which you're unable to deal with it and then leave and do other things and commit those heroes elsewhere. So if your safe lane just cannot deal with the push from an enemy team comp, maybe just leave like one hero up there to get XP and maybe do some wave clear and then pivot your other heroes elsewhere. And then, salvage that. Or just accept the fact that they're going to take your tower. That's also a perfectly legitimate thing to do. It's not a fun thing to do. But if they're playing like Jakiro, Venno, and like an Enigma, and they're just running Eidolons and running wards and running other things at your tower, like just accept the fact that you've lost your tower and do something else. Don't like run your head into a brick wall over and over again. That's something that's very dangerous to allow to happen to you, basically. Mm-hmm. Similarly, like we said earlier, if you are the ones running the trilane, if you cannot accomplish your goal, just like accept it and then leave. Go do other things. Don't run your head into a brick wall over and over again. Like if you cannot push the lane, stop trying. Like go elsewhere. Do other things. Okay. Yeah, he has some other like more specific things. Like if you're playing an aggro lane but they beat you with only 2 heroes, then like definitely leave. Like if you are losing out to 2 heroes as 3, something has clearly gone horribly wrong, and there's absolutely no point to keep 3 heroes there.
Would you just move 1 out and keep 2 there, or would you?
Depends on the comp. I'd probably move both. Yeah. If I have a real offlaner like an Axe or a Bristleback, I'm probably going to remove 2 heroes. But if I have like something weird like Venge, Venno, and Sven, then I might move the Sven to jungle, and I'll just leave like Venno and Venge to just be a body of heroes there that need to be dealt with.
Okay.
Yeah, and also because that'll also equal out the farm problem. Was like you cannot keep 3 heroes there because if you're losing out, you're doubly losing because there's just so little XP circulating, especially if they're denying. Whereas if you have 2 heroes there, that's much more manageable. Like, sure, you're both going to be a little lower level, but it's not super low level. Yeah, like Lieutenant Condor mentioned, the first game, his goal or their team's goal was to get a tier 1 by 5 minutes. So if the tier 1 is not at least like 50 to 75% health at 5 minutes, something is clearly not working and you need to leave, because this is just, you're wasting your time there and you're wasting your heroes. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage. But
what do you think?
Yeah.
Because like that to me sounds like really, really early. Is that about right for a T1? I guess it depends on.
Depends on.
I guess if that's your goal, right? And your
if you picked heroes to do that, yeah. Like if you had Centaur and a Jakiro and a Venno, maybe. Then that's a pretty reasonable goal, because like you have Jakiro, who's going to be constantly popping liquid fire on the tower. You have good kill potential between Venomous Gale and Double Edge. And then you also have some push from Centaur's return on tower, and then you also have some push from the Venno. Another common thing would be like if you have an Axe and you're creep cutting, then you have 2 heroes and creeps that can kill the wave. It's a pretty reasonable thing to get a tower by 5 or 6 minutes with an aggro duo or an aggro trilane if it's coordinated. But if you get interrupted, suddenly that 5-minute tower turns into a 10-minute tower, and you've just wasted 10 minutes. You've just wasted 5 minutes. So yeah, you need to be cautious. Aggro trilanes are very committal. Like, you will frequently either lose because you aggroed or win because you aggroed. And I'm a cautious player, so I almost never aggro. I just don't like aggro lanes. I find that I personally lose more often than I win with them. So I'd rather play like slower tempo Dota and not commit to that. I kind of like aggro duos because aggro duos are like a happy medium. But a lot of aggro duos are also a huge waste of time. So again, you have to be coordinated and know like, hey, we're running a Baden and Enchantress, and that's how we're going to win this lane. Whereas if you play like a Baden and Venge, it's like, we just don't do anything. Like, you have a stun, but I don't have kill potential. I have push, but it doesn't work with you. Like, it's just awkward. So you have to be very specific when you're running these aggro lanes because they are so committal.
Yeah.
So I would caution against it, honestly.
Okay.
I don't like aggro lanes, but, teach their own. It's good for cheese. Like honestly, like if you're trying to farm party MMR, just find a good aggro tri lane or an aggro duo lane, just run it over and over and over again, and you'll win so many games. Like, you just point blank, simply, no need to like expand on this point at all, but it is a very easy way to disrupt enemies, and it's a very easy way to just win. Like, if you find, every time I play Enchantress at Baden with my friend, we always win the safe lane. And that means we win 80% of our games. That's a super easy way to win MMR. It's also one of the ways party MMR is kind of nonsense. But yeah, so look into that, honestly. Like, if you find a good aggro lane, it's a very good way to win games. But if you tend to rely on it too much, then you're going to, like, lose in the long run, potentially. So,
Okay. Cool. Do you want to... I guess actually that's probably a good place to stop on.
Yeah, I think that's good. We'll get talking to from Proud because we went a little over an hour, but that's just how it is.
Okay, so let's do some plugs. You can follow us on Twitter at Fourth Spirit. You can follow Ursinity at Ursinity. You can follow me at AUpBdub. We have a new YouTube channel.
That's the important one.
Yeah, so please go and subscribe there. The link is in the Discord. I'll put the link out on Twitter as well. We had to change. Well, you spoke about it last Thursday, didn't you? So
yeah, well, I mean, we need to talk about it constantly.
Yeah, true. So, we had to change channels. Please go subscribe.
Yeah, for some reason, it's not coming up or the old YouTube's not coming up when I do Fourth Spirit. Anyway, I'll look into that by the time this is up. But yeah, if you go to the old YouTube channel that if you're listening to this on that, you are subscribed to, it should be like the plugged, what's it called?
I can't think of what it's called either, but it's the video that comes up when you go on the
like
channel.
It's like
the featured video or highlighted video, maybe. I'm not sure what the actual correct terminology is.
Yeah, it should be there, but for whatever reason, it keeps unpinning it. Anyway, there's a link. There are links to the new YouTube channel everywhere, but basically we need to get to like 100 subs, I think. That way we can get a custom link. Yeah, because, it's annoying, but like I said, I explained in the video, if you're interested in why we're doing this, it's just to avoid problems in the future, which coincidentally means creating problems for us now. But, that's just how it is. The podcast, if you're listening to this on YouTube, we're going to start exclusively putting the podcast on the new YouTube channel once it has a custom link. So prepare for that eventuality if you like to listen via YouTube, which is a distinct minority of you, but a not insignificant minority. So, yeah. Other plugs.
Yes. Sorry, I was just distracted by my cat. She kind of gets...
I heard her on your desk.
Yeah, she gets, because it's past midnight now, she gets kind of antsy and wants me to go to bed. So she just comes and harasses me until I do that. And so she just, jumps on the desk and is just kind of like around my feet, like squiggling around on the floor. So she's quite difficult to ignore. But yes, you should, if you want to help us out, go visit our Patreon, become a patron. That'd be good. Or if you can't do that, tell a friend about the show, leave a review on iTunes. Yeah, I was going to say, maybe we'll start reading those out again. I don't know.
Maybe.
And yeah, join the Discord, which is discord.gg/fourth, and send us a question. You can send one at show@fullspirit.com or message.
Being cut out, but that's fine because I'm going to finish the plugs. Or you can email us show@fourthspirit.com or just DM any of us on Twitter or on Discord. That is about it, I think. I don't know. There might be other plugs, but that's fine. B's cat, I'm sure, kicked over the cord on her mic. So thanks for listening. I think we've all learned a little bit about ourselves, a little bit about Dota 2, and hopefully a little bit about each other. So goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.